Hey, welcome back to Global News Morning. A pleasure to have you join us. I'm your buddy Bill and ready to talk with our good buddy, Mr. Matt Lee. How are you, sir?
I'm great. How are you?
Always doing well. We're
Great.
talking about cracks in the foundation. If you're
Yeah.
looking to put your house on the market and you're walking around, you're looking at the foundation, you see a crack. A couple of things to keep in mind. Take care of it before it gets bigger. And we'll
Yeah,
talk about why a crack is dangerous in your foundation, but also it's not the end of the world. There are ways to repair cracks in the foundations.
that's right. And it's one of these things where people sometimes look at and go, I don't know if I want to identify this because is it going to be something bigger than it really is, or is it just something where the concrete has dried and has created a settling crack? I mean, you can get a settling crack. You can also get cracks that are caused by water. And what I mean by that is, like, if we look at the photos that I've brought in, uh, you see these eaves troughs that run down, and you've got this little short runoff. So they bring it down to an L, like a 45, and then you're supposed to run the water away from the house. Well, if you're only running the water that far away from the house, or it's running straight down, it's actually creating this cavity underground. So if you actually took a shovel and you dug down, say 3, 4 feet, you would come to this hole that has basically, this dirt has eroded away because of the water. And this happens a lot of the times because you've got this functioning O pipe. It's supposed to pull all this water away, and what it'll do is it'll pull the dirt too. So
Mm.
if you're pulling that dirt away, and say a footing is not exactly right in the corner, you'll get this kind of shift that has happened. You get this tiny crack, and sometimes tiny crack. And I think that the best thing to do is, first of all, run that water away from the house and build that dirt back up. But really, get a company to either come and cut it, and they'll cut it with a zip saw, or they'll cut it with a diamond blade, like that they use, like a hammer drill, and they'll fill it. And I think that this is like you're preventing water is the biggest thing, because in our climate, you have water that comes in and then it freezes, so then it becomes a bigger issue.
Is it like
uh,
pavement where once in the spring we always notice potholes? That's because throughout
yeah,
the winter water gets in, it freezes, expands,
yeah,
melts, and it's just this constant process. Is it kind of like the same thing?
yeah. I think that any type of concrete mortar, like if you look at chimneys, and if chimneys crack and they're left, you'll see that there's spalling that happens off a brick. It'll be the same thing on a foundation. So basically, if water is able to seep in, and then overnight it freezes and it expands, it'll just push. And water's just so strong that it will cause more damage than anything. So my feeling is that take a company like Safe Step, or somebody that has an epoxy machine.
Mm.
That basically, if you've ever heard of PL Premium, it's like an industrial strength epoxy. You'll fill that crack, but that stuff is so strong that it will tighten it up. It'll stay exactly the way it is. So I think using these different procedures, I think, is the best way to handle it. Whether you use an epoxy, whether you cut it and have it filled with a mortar, that would work, or there's another picture of blue skin, and basically they take this tar and they put the tar over it, and then they put this pool liner basically over this. This is like this industrial strength pool liner. It's called blue skin, and it blocks that area. So that would be another.
Small cracks can often become big cracks. Is
Yeah.
this a do-it-yourself job with small cracks that you can see above the ground line?
Yeah, like even if you dig down, you'll probably get to a point where it actually stops. So you'll get to a point that a couple feet down, if you have a small crack, it'll get to a point that it's stopped. It's created this settling crack, and it's not going to be that big of a deal. I would say that it could be potentially, if you're handy, it could be a do-it-yourself. Uh, if it's a small crack, under an eighth of an inch, anything over an eighth of an inch, I think that you need to bring in a professional. Those types of companies that deal with that in particular stuff, because they might say, you know what, like, it's probably best to maybe cut this, do this, and if it's bigger and it's at the point that they say, look, at like, this is actually getting to a point that it's structural, you might need to bring an engineer in to have a look at it just to make sure.
All right, all the different stages of a
Yeah,
crack in the foundation. Matt Lee, we thank you so much. Thanks for all your advice, and we'll talk to you real soon. Be safe.
Sounds great. You too.
Real estate tips brought to you by Matt Lee of Royal LePage.